Hi, my name is Sharanya Kumar. I'm a fourth year, and for my research topic, I will be discussing the human papillomavirus. The problem in society. Currently, 79 million Americans are infected with HPV, and approximately 14 million become newly infected each year due to how common the virus is. It's predicted that almost every person who is sexually active will at least get HPV at some point in their life if they do not get the HPV vaccine. How does the disease happen? So HPV is contracted through a sexually transmitted infection, or otherwise known as an STI. This can cause genital warts and different types of cancer, including cancer of the vulva, cervix, vagina, penis, scrotum, rectum, and anus. Unfortunately, most people who have high-risk type of HPV will never show any signs of infection until it has already caused serious health problems. That's why checkups are so important. Since HPV is contracted through an STI, it can occur anywhere since it is transmitted through sex. An infected person will infect another person if precautionary measures are not taken. Some of the etiological factors are that HPV is higher risk for people in their 20s and early 30s. HPV largely affects the female population since a large number of people who are infected with HPV contract cervical cancer. Future risks for the community include missing annual checkups, such as the PAP or HPV tests. There are two strategies on how to solve the problem of contracting HIV. A first strategy would be to talk to your partner about whether they have been sexually active and whether or not they have been tested for STDs. The next strategy would be to get the HPV vaccine, which is the best means of preventing contraction of the HPV virus. The HPV vaccine is a series of 3 different shots, the first 2 separated within a month, and the last 2 separated within about a 6-month period. For women under 30, it's recommended to get a pap smear done every 3 years. For women between the ages of 30 to 65, it's recommended to get an HPV test along with a pap test every 5 years in order to test for cervical cancer. There currently is no cure for HPV, but it usually takes several years for cancer to develop, and abnormal cells in the cervix can be detected and treated before they turn into cancer. A popular historical example dealing with the case of HPV is carried out by virologist Harold Zurhausen, who set out to find the virus that was causing cervical cancer in women. Zurhausen and his research team studied HPV-caused genital wart samples and compared the DNA in the wart samples to the DNA in cervical cancer tumors. He and his research team extracted HPV DNA from the tumor samples, amplified the HPV in order to identify the strains. They were able to find 2 strains, HPV 16 and HPV 18, that were high risk for developing cervical cancer. And in 1986, Zurhausen contacted pharmaceutical companies to help create an HPV vaccine that would help prevent millions of people from contracting HPV. A prominent cultural example of the HPV virus exists in Africa, where cervical cancer is the most common cause of cancer. In Africa, around 22% of female cancers and 12% of newly diagnosed cancer in both men and women occur every year. In order to reduce the cervical cancer burden in the African region, the World Health Organization has a goal to continue to support ministries of health in order to implement priority cancer prevention and control interventions that cut across the continuum of prevention, early detection, diagnosis, treatment, and palliative care services. Scientific literature, as well as literature from other medical agencies, state that the best way to limit potential risk for contracting HPV is to practice abstinence, or abstain from having sex. Another way to help mitigate the outburst of HPV contractions is to practice safe sex by using barriers such as condoms or dental dams, and also to provide sex education to students in elementary school and high school. In my opinion, the best thing to do in regards to prevent HPV is to help understand the risks that are associated with having unprotected sex so that people can be safe from HPV. In order to better understand these risks, I think it is important that sex education becomes a more comfortable and familiar topic among students everywhere. Conversations about sex, STIs, and cancer should all be made more comfortable between people so that prevention can be achieved early on and cancer can be prevented. If we start out, first and foremost, with educating people, then people will be able to make better decisions and become healthier and safer people.